Hey everyone, I'm Dylan Miller, and you're watching ComicsVerse. I'm here at FlameCon 2016 with Hugh Tims. Hugh has created and published some of his own comics, and even has his own website, bettercomics.com, which has The Medievals, Two Spirit Deal, and Lightning Duck. How are you liking the con so far? Do you have any highlights, Hugh?
Of this show, I think basically my favorite part is usually cosplay. Like, that's how I love to talk to people around my table, just be like, oh, can I take a photo with you?
You have a few comics here at the table. Do you want to talk about what's here?
Sure. So Lightning Duck is my kids comic, and it's basically an environmentally conscious anthropomorphic character. All these animals just start walking upright, and they have to deal with society. So in that way, it's kind of like the X-Men. They face adversity, they don't have jobs, and it's almost, it's an allusion to a lot of different things in our culture where we basically have to deal with an aspect of our society that's not being taken care of. And in this specific one, the villains are endangered species, they're aliens from another world that are invasive. So I try to make a environmentally aware statement, but hide it under humor and fun, so the kids don't get hit over the head with it. Because I loved Captain Planet when I was growing up. I felt like I could do a lot of things, hopefully to help save the world. And for me, that was like, oh, I'll do comics because it's something I love, and then it has mass outreach, so you can reach a lot of readers and hopefully have the same influence so that they can actually hopefully cause the world to be a better place. And I think that starts with the environment for a lot of our issues that we face these days. Lightning Duck has his own band, and that's all he really wants to do. And he's not allowed to do what he really wants to do because everything else just kind of gets in his way. And I mean, that's something that I've always had to deal with too, so I feel that struggle is really interesting. And it's a lot of my work is autobiographical in some way, shape, or form or another. All artwork is somewhat ego-driven. Before I started doing conventions, if somebody asked me what I read as a comic, I would feel embarrassed to say X-Men, just because I was like, yeah, I still like those things that I liked when I was a teenager. And that was the case when I was a teenager too. When I was maybe 12, all my brothers and sisters were like, why are you still reading Donald Duck and DuckTales? And I was like, because they're so good. It's like, I'm not ready to mature. I'm not ready to read Watchmen and V for Vendetta because they're dismal. And I really enjoy the fun aspect of these adventures.
When did you first start making comics?
I went to Maine College of Art because my mom didn't think it was a good idea to go to Joe Kubert because it wasn't accredited, and I needed to get a real job if comics didn't work out. And looking back, I'm really thankful that they did that. I have to have a day job, which is difficult when you want to mass produce something that takes this much time. But at least I have a day job that can do that. I can live comfortably, and that works. But Mecca was a really great school. At the time, they didn't have anything, even an illustration department. So I had to design my own major. I had to make the world understand that comics was an art form in the fine arts field. So that was fun. And actually, it was great because art school really challenged the concept of structure and narrative. If you have a comic book, you're told this is what to do, left to right or right to left. That's how you read a comic, down to the bottom of the page. But the idea in art school is really to play with different types of narrative. So I would tell stories even with t-shirts sometimes, just putting t-shirts up on a wall in a gallery. So that would portray the comic. Or flip books, or comic books where two stories were happening at the same time on two separate pages. Screen printed books. There's so many different things and styles and ways you can actually make a comic book. It doesn't have to just be the format that we're always used to. But my first comic book I ever made was The Hobbit Retold. It was a contemporary version of The Hobbit in Sienna. The entire thing was in Sienna ink. And it was fun. I got the first issue out, and I had the sequel lined up. And Gollum was going to be a heroin addict, and Smaug was going to be this dragon made out of old junky cars. But I talked to Tolkien's people, and they weren't going to publish it no matter what I did. So I just was like, that's fine. I'm going to continue to work on my own projects. And God, I feel like this one I actually made this for my first real boyfriend. And that's a good impetus if like you don't have any like idea like how to make a comic. If you're in love with somebody, it works. It makes you go really hard and really fast, and you want to get a present done, right? So if you have a deadline that is a present for someone, that's a great way to get a comic book done. Lightning Duck was my first comic, and that did really well at the shows that I brought it to. It had a really good response, and that's kind of like my love of DuckTales. At the same time, I remember that era of my life. Sonic the Hedgehog was big. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doodling and then drawing and liking what things I liked, like what characters I liked, continuing to draw them. But you really need a comic book to like make you buckle down and just say like, okay, I'm going to make a narrative, I'm going to make a story, I'm going to have to edit that story and re-edit that story until I show it to all my friends and they're like, yeah, that's good, that makes sense. That's a lot of commitment too, just to like go out there in the world. I still have trouble with that, and find people that will read your work and give you good critique. That's probably like the nicest part of going to an art school, is that you'll always have critique, and you have to develop those things after college so you maintain a level of like professionalism, consistency.
How long does it usually take you to make a comic, and what's your creative process from when you first come up with it to when it comes out?
So you can have an idea in the back of your head all the time of where the story is going, but you really need like software to make sure you get your narratives in place and your world building in place so that you can go back to a resource. So when you're looking at your comic, you're looking at your blank page and you're thinking, how do I start? You can go back to something where everything about that character is represented, everything about their direction, their story arc is represented. So to answer your question, it takes a long time because you're trying to take any notes whatsoever that you have, compile them, tell everyone else in the world to go away. That's really big. Like telling everyone else you need time to yourself, and actually making that work without distraction. I think the worst thing right now for an artist or a creator is that they will be heavily distracted by probably a million different software, social media, whatever. Ideally, 6 months. Ideally. It's more like a year, and that's per book, so it's horrible. And then I decided to go with webcomics because at least there I can touch base with all the fans and tell them I'm still here. You can go down to lightningduck.com or bettercomicswithanx.com, and there's many ways to contact me. And yeah, I'll be mailing those out because I like dealing with comic book stores, definitely. But if I can, I'll just go directly to the fans. So feel free to find me on the internet. It's easy. The Medievals really kind of takes precedent story-wise right now. I want the webcomics to continue to propagate a lot more interest. So Two-Spirit Deal might be taking a back seat. I am sad to say. But at the same time, I want to do what I was talking about earlier and play with the idea of how big or how small a monthly book could be. And if I'm going to do Two-Spirit Deal, maybe break it down to 8 pages so I can have something that I can put out. These teens find out that they're part of something larger. And it's not necessarily just because they're gay, but it's because of their outsider influence. And the Native Americans believe that, some aspects of being homosexual were good as, a medicine person, as a as a shaman. And that will have a basis in the story, basically with all these characters that are in contemporary times that find themselves taken out of that and displaced.
What do you find to be like the easiest part and the hardest part?
Easiest part and the hardest part. The easiest part is getting to draw a character that you love. The hardest part is managing time and money. Because people are going to take advantage of you if you don't respect the price you put on your own artwork, and if they're going to put their vision ahead of yours. That's why I'm really happy being the age I am and not having broken into the big two of Marvel and DC. I could be that person and I could be making money making other people's characters, but I'm not, because I'm making my characters and I'm making stories of my characters. So I've already gotten past the point of wishing I could do something creator owned. Everybody that's a fan is also an editor and is helpful in my creative process. So it's great to hear from fans.
Once again, I'm Dylan Miller, and you've been watching ComicsVerse. You can find us at www.comicsverse.com. You can also find us at our social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can also find our podcast at iTunes and SoundCloud. Thanks for watching.